All right, everybody, we are live here on the Yishai Fleisher show, and we are joined by Rav Mike Feuer, and we're just going to wait a few minutes until everybody comes on board right now on Facebook, on Twitter, Periscope, and on YouTube. We'll just wait a tad. Rav Mike, how you doing today?
Oh, thank the good Lord. I
Good.
myself am using this time to share our show.
That's great. Share the show. And also, if anybody's out there, including our good friend Lou, hope he comes on, which will be just a good sign, can let us know how the sound is coming through. That would be great. How the sound and the visual is working. That would be great. And we're very excited to talk about an awesome, almost like too
Almost
dramatic
biblical.
of it. Yeah,
Almost biblical.
almost biblical. That's a good name for the show. Almost biblical. I like that. But it really is a very biblical show. And behind me, as you could see, you see the background I've chosen for today's show.
I couldn't miss it.
That is some face-off. That is a face-off between two powerful forces, which we're going to be dealing with today. And I just want to see if there's any comments coming in. Everybody that's coming in, just say, please, Boker Tov, Shalom. Identify yourself. Let us know where you're from. Send us your blessings. All right?
Yourself.
That's right. And we'll start in just another minute here with Rav Mike Feuer and myself, talking about the Torah portion of Vayishla.
That's right. Send it out there, man. Send it out there.
It's a powerful, dramatic piece. So you know what? Let's just begin. Okay, Rob says sounds and looks great. USA, Shalom, Rob. Rob with an H, RHOB. What do you think about that? That's a cool H in there. That threw in like a hey, as though God gave you an extra hey there. And Timothy says Boker Tov. So I think we are starting to be ready to roll. Let's do it. In 3, 2, 1. Shalom, everybody, and welcome to the Yishai Fleisher Show, broadcasting live from Judea to the world. You're a part of it, wherever you are. We are live with Rav Mike Feuer, joining us all the way from the Pardes Institute in Jerusalem. Rav Mike, shalom, and welcome to the show.
Shalom, Yishai. It's great to see you.
Great to see you, and we have a hello from people all over the world, including Erica, who says Shalom Chaverim from Sweden, and Rob, and who else? And Timothy, folks coming in from all over the world saying Shalom on Facebook. And we have Rav Mike. I would say I a little bit fear this Torah portion in the sense that
Jacob
it's just
both.
Yeah. It's just got so much powerful imagery, so much conflict, and the kind of stuff that's just not easy to just say, oh, it's all good. It's not like sweet, cuddly stuff. It's like gritty stuff. And really, let's just understand the background of the story is that Jacob is now coming back to the land of Israel. So he has gotten good at being shifty. And the kind of maybe behavior that you need at Laban's house, out in the outside of the land of Israel, in Haran. Now he's coming down from Syria. He came down at the end of last week's Torah portion from northern Syria, southern Turkey, back to the land of Israel, and he's doing the path right now. He's actually going to be entering the land of Israel in this week's Torah portion, and the general way to do it is you go down. And then you cross over the Jordan Valley and start going up into the mountain region in central Israel through the Tirza Valley, which leads you right into Shechem. And on the way there, he's going to bump into a place called Pnuel or Pniel, Sukkot. We'll see in a second. But the point is that like there's a transition between outside of the land of Israel to the land of Israel. Let's see if Jacob is still just a tent dweller or if he's able to cope with the various challenges that he's going to face along the way.
He's bringing a whole new reality with him, too, because he's no longer just an individual. He left on his own. He's coming back as the father of a massive family, which itself is on the way to becoming a nation. So there's a lot at stake here.
He has got now kids, and he has now 2 wives and 2 handmaidens. He's a big papa. He's also got a lot of material wealth. So he's got stuff. He's not just the way he left, which was empty-handed. He's coming in kind of full.
As God promised.
As God has promised him. And we'll talk about the seeming God promises as opposed to ones that will come in a different way than expected. We'll see that in a second. Right. Anyway, as he's coming to the land of Israel, he's got to do some housekeeping work. A little bit of some of the old problems that the way he dealt with it was kind of running away from it. He didn't face his brother Esav. He's faced his brother Esav when it was time to buy the birthright. But then when it was time to get the blessings of the father, he snuck in and then snuck out. And then when it was told to him that his brother wanted to kill him, he runs away. Yes, by the advice of his mother Rivka, but he's running away. Now he's coming back. It's time to face up to what you did to your brother and how your brother feels about you.
I mean, this is the first step in really becoming a new man. Remember that at the end of last week's Parsha, he received a new name of Yisrael, but it doesn't really stick, right? Here he is, he's Yaakov once again. And in that sense, each of the trials that he faces in this Parsha is an opportunity to decide, well, who will he be? I mean, there will always be that part in him that wants to evade and sort of like take the end, run, etc. And then there's that part with him that is Yashar, right, from Yisrael. It's very straight. And we see in this... in his recontact with Esav, that he goes charging in straight ahead. There's not any hesitation. I mean, there's a lot of tactical wisdom, but there's no hesitation.
Okay, well, there might be a different approach to that. We'll see in a second. And it says that he sends emissaries to his brother Esav, and he sends emissaries to say, Im Lavan Garti, I have lived with Laban, which means I picked up some of the tricks, or the word Garti, and listeners have been asking me to define more words in Hebrew and to help people out. So the word Garti means I lived with, I sojourned with Lavan, but if you mix up the letters, it also stands for the word or the numerical value of Taryag, which is 613. Rashi says, I lived with Lavan, but I kept my Judaism. Im Lavan garti, v'taryag mitzvot shamarti. I lived with Lavan, but I kept up the commandments. And the emissaries that he sends out come back saying, Esav is indeed coming with you, and 400 men are with him. Now, how do you read that? Is he coming with a beautiful entourage to say shalom, or is he coming with a war party to have a hanging? What is he really doing?
Or does Esav not actually know himself? Mm-hmm. Remember, we have a tendency to sort of hang this all on Yaakov's perspective, which is not surprising because he's really the focus of the story. Nonetheless, it could very well be that Esav himself doesn't know. In a lot of what happens depends on how he's received, which is why, at least according to the Or HaChaim HaKodesh, Yaakov is so troubled. Right? The sort of classic line we speak about every year is V'yira Yaakov me'od. When he hears that Esav's coming with this big party, he was afraid, and it really distressed him. And so the Or HaChaim HaKodesh says he was afraid. That's logical. I mean, 400 big hairy men with Esav, I'd be afraid too. But why v'yetzelo? What disturbed him is because he understood that it might just be that Esav is not coming to fight him. But should he take a defensive posture, he will provoke that very instinct within Esav. Mm-hmm. And it's a lesson to all of us in life. Never assume that the world is some passive object that you're observing. The world is responsive. The Borei Olam, the Creator, made a responsive creation. And the stance you take toward it is actually what the world will be, which is a lot of weight. That's a v'yetzelo. It's scary and quite disturbing, potentially.
Indeed. And Yaakov is afraid. And one of the big decisions that he makes here is that he splits up the camp. And it says it in a few different ways, that he splits up the camp. And he's going to divide the camp into two camps, saying, if Esav comes and destroys one of the camps, im yavo Esav ela machaneh, if Esav comes to one of the camps, ha'achat, one of them, v'hikau, and destroys it, hits it and destroys it, v'haya machaneh hanishar lepleita, the second one will be a remnant, a she'erit. I think I told you one time, there's a lot of synagogues in America called Sherith, like Sherith Israel. Right, Sherith. Right, Sherith is like, what's a Sherith anyway? It's like, sounds like sheriff. It's like, no, She'erit is a remnant of Israel. I sometimes get sad at these kind of names. It's not like the remnant of Israel. That's the name of your synagogue. I mean, it's a beautiful thing, but to me, it's like, I guess I'm part of a time where I think like, no, we got to talk about the grandeur of Israel, not like the remnant of Israel. But in any case, okay.
I mean, it's just a quick word. It's important to note that has to do with the divine promise that Am Yisrael has never been about numbers. Mm-hmm. We've never been about the mass. We've been about the divine promise that we'll never be eliminated. We shrink and grow to fit our mission, right? That she'erit represents a sort of an indelible commitment of the divine toward our existence.
Right.
So there's an element of gratitude, I guess is my point.
I see what you're saying. I guess also homiletically we could say that when a person feels very lost, he should know that inside there's a remnant. There's always the pure soul, which is never sullied. And I guess maybe that ties into Hanukkah, which is like there's always something beautiful, something that will not be touched, something that can be purified once again, like a root source that nothing can really touch. Even the most evil things in this world cannot take away the purity, that pintele yid, as they say, or the sherit.
Amen. Help me remember for Hanukkah. By the end of the show, I want to invite people to my Hanukkah show next week. So
great.
We'll remember.
Okay, we'll definitely do that. Hold on one second. I see that I forgot to plug in my my computer. Hey, Leah, I need you to plug in my computer before it shuts down, please. No. I'm in the middle of a show, so I could really use your help. And she's in the middle of a class. Okay.
Listen, man.
I think I tweeted this week that
Did you
that
the charger?
Leah, you have the charger.
No, it was in my room and now it's.
I don't have the charger and I'm in the middle of a live show, but there's one in my backpack
thousands
as well.
of people hearing this discussion.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh! You know what? I was running around right before the show, and there was one more thing I forgot, which is to bring in the plug. I have one in the backpack here. If anybody can't find it, there it is. My beloved daughter is doing a great job of plugging in the computer. I guess that's what we needed. We need a sherith, right? We need a sherit. A little.
Oh, you're mute. Can't hear you. Yishai, you're muted. Oh. We lost Yishai. Well, I mean, I could improvise right now. Maybe we should talk about him while he's not on the air. I'm going to take the opportunity, I know what it is, to invite everybody on this coming Monday, December 7th at 8 p.m. Israel time. I'm giving a class in honor of my father's yard site. And it's about gratitude and how the Hanukkah lights are themselves actually gratitude. Y'all can join me there. More information.
Hello, Mike. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I was stalling and advertising my shir while you had disappeared in an unconscionable manner. I'm hurt.
Rav Mike, can you hear me?
I hear just fine. Can you hear me?
Yeah. I had a little technical difficulty here today, but I think we're
back.
back.
In the background, there's still sort of light static. It looks like you're kind of actually radiating into the background.
There is a fun fuzziness here. Hold on.
Yeah, how do you do that, dude? I'd like to be able to do that. It's not happening for me. All right, let's get to work.
I'm trying to.
I'm
just facing a little bit of. I'm facing a little bit of challenges here, but we're going to be back in just 1 second. And how's that? Are we back?
Yeah. I
think we're back. Okay, that was awesome. Okay, we're definitely going to cut that out for Benji says now it's the Rav Feuer show. There you go. Okay, we're back. Speaking of the technical difficulties that I just had, we have a very famous verse, which I hope to play at the end of the show on the podcast only. I will play a very famous song made of this phrase, or this verse, which is chapter 32, verse 11. It says that Jacob says to God, Katonti mikol hachasadim umikol ha'emet asher hasita et avdecha, right? Which is, I've become small. I've become small because of all the things that you've given me, and therefore I've lost my merit, or I'm just so grateful, I'm so small, and you are so huge, God, you've blessed me so much, and I feel small.
Not worthy. Right, I'm not worthy.
We're not worthy. Okay? We're not worthy.
Okay. Everybody who knows the reference can say
right. That's right. Hashtag, you know what that I'm not worthy is, but that's an easy one. This word katonti, and I heard this from Rabbi Et Shalom, Yitzchak Et Shalom, which, and I mentioned it year after year, but it's also something so amazing that in one of the tractates it says, how much should a Talmud Chacham, a scholar, a Jewish scholar, a Torah learner, how much haughtiness should he have? So one opinion says 0, and the other opinion says 1/8 of an eighth. And comes the Gaon Mivilna, the Gra, and he says the 8th Torah portion, the 8th verse of the 8th Torah portion starts with Katonti, I was small because of all the kindness that you've given me. That's how much haughtiness a scholar should have, which is to feel small compared to the greatness of God. Right? Is that cool or what? Come on.
I mean, it's kind of the opposite of the old joke about the Mussar Yeshiva, where the new guy comes and they're all sitting around the table and saying, like, I'm a worm, I'm useless, and he says, I'm nothing. Everyone looks and says, oh, the new guy, look who thinks he's nothing.
Right, that's right. That's right. The old joke. That's good. So he's that's right. Anyway, he says, "Save me, Atzileni na, please now save me, miadachi miad Esav, from my brother from Esav. Ki arei anochi." Lou is asking, why does Esav refer to Yaakov as brother, but Yaakov refers to Esav as my lord? That's we'll see that in a second. That's obeisance. But in this case, we see clearly they know they're brothers. They know they are brothers, and they're very much conscious of their brotherhood. In any case, so he prepares a gift for Esav, and this is a lot of gifts here, right? He's gonna send camels. Wait a second. I don't have an English translation here, so I have to think of this. We have goats, we've got rams, we've got lambs, we've got camels. We've got
everything a pastoralist could want.
A what?
Everything a pastoralist could want.
That's right, and not a vegetarian like some people.
Because he's eating these animals.
Oh, okay.
Maybe he's just milking them and using their hair for clothing. You know?
That's right. Absolutely. So he sends them all these gifts, and he makes it so that there's space between wave and wave of gift. And some people understand this to be a kind of deception, that it just seems like more gifts than it was than if it just came in one chunk. Rashi says it's in order to satiate the eye of that evil one, which is Esav. But I think personally, it's not so much deception as in salesmanship or psychology. I think that one of the things that we kind of learn about Yaakov is that his cleverness is to understand how to present something. And I mean, if that's clever, if that's evil, then put me to jail, because because working on how to present something and how to say something and how to deliver it and how that it should enter people's minds is a big part of certainly the modern age, and it seems like the ancient time as well. How do you placate this guy? How do you do it? And so I'm going to give him these gifts, but I want to make sure that he understands the largesse of it.
I mean, I can tell you as an educator, there's always a thin line there, because you can't sell someone something they don't want. And so either you can figure out the way in which what you have to sell them, or teach them for that matter, as I meant it as an educator, either you can figure out how it is what you have to teach them is actually relevant and important to them, or you can manipulate them into believing something which is not important actually is. And so there's always a thin line in terms of course, you have to be able to understand the other person and figure out where it really touches them. On the other hand, you don't want to sort of overwhelm them with it. So Yaakov has that capacity. In fact, one could argue that it's one of the primary things he bequeaths to us, to his children, is we have a task to bring the Torah to the world. But it never happens. We're not, the conquering type religion that some others have been in the past, where we try to ram the Torah down people's throats. On the contrary, we usually err on the opposite, which is like, yeah, go away, just leave us alone. Our generation has, I think, a unique task in trying to figure out how is it that we communicate to the world that the Torah actually matters to everybody.
Right. That's a very good point. And I think that this network, the Land of Israel Network, and I think your efforts at Pardes and your other efforts at RavMikeFeuer.com, RavMike.com, and JewishStory.co, and my efforts here at the Yishai Fleisher Show are really to do that, which is to send that Torah out and let the people who are yearning for it really imbibe from it. And I just read with Malka an email from Krista, who really just says, like, this is her way. She's a Bible lover. This is her way to connect and to understand more. And she specifically asked for more Hebrew understanding, and so I'm going to try to do that as well. In any case, I think there's 3 different verses that explain that he's splitting the camp in half. But finally, he takes his family and he passes it over a river. This is a big river, the Yabok River, Ma'avar Yabok. There's even a famous book called Ma'avar Yabok. And it's a holy Torah book that is called Ma'avar Yabok, the Yabok passage. And actually, there's a beautiful community called Chemdat which my friend Yaela lives in, which it's in the Samaria Mountains, but it looks right over into the Jordanian Ma'avar Yabok.
Oh yeah, cool.
Which is today, and it says very famous verse, Veivater Yaakov levado. Jacob stayed alone. He ended up alone. He passed his whole family. The rabbis say he went back for a few canisters.
I said this happened at the end of last week's parsha before, didn't I? I did.
Yeah, I didn't know. I didn't know
what I was talking about.
Yeah, I was letting you have a pass on that. He says, "Vayivater Yaakov levado." They mix together because it is one narrative at the end. Vayivater Yaakov levado v'yavek ish imo ad alot hashachar. So he stayed alone, and yet somebody was with him. A man was with him, and he was wrestling with him ad alot hashachar until the rise of the dawn, until the dawn. And this is a famous song. V'yivater Yaakov levado v'yavek ish imo.
I have on good authority. It's the only verse from the Torah that Reb Shlomo made a nigun to.
Aha, you're right. You have told me that. That's awesome. Adalot hashachar, adalot hashachar. This is like a classic Israeli kind of a Zionist song. I just want people to get a sense of it. The awesome part of this verse is it is in conflict in the very verse itself. It says he's alone, but somebody is struggling with him. We've talked about it in other years that it could be that this is I think on some level or another level this is a struggle between Jacob and himself.
Yeah,
Jacob between Jacob and Israel, and I'll never forget. I'm sorry, I was formed in the bosom in the womb of like the 80s culturally, and I'll never forget, Superman 2, where he's like fighting with like himself. There's like this whole scene where, there's like two Supermans, like a dark one and a good one, and they're all like struggling with one another. Is that Superman 2? I think it's 2 or 3, whatever. I don't remember. I haven't seen it in 15, 20 years. I don't know. But like, but it was in the 80s. And this idea of like, there's like this like struggle. So who is this person that he's struggling with? Is it between Jacob and Israel? Is it Jacob and Israel who are struggling? Is it the way the sages explained that it's Jacob and Esau's angel? And yesterday I heard that the Rashbam teaches that in fact this is the angel of Esav who is trying to, that Jacob actually, listen to this new teaching that I never heard, that Jacob was trying to run away from confrontation with Esav. And that this time Esav's angel is Ma'akevoto. He's slowing him down. He's actually got him in a grip, and he's waiting for he wants to force Yaakov to have a mano a mano conflict with him. He wants to do the face off, and Yaakov wants to run away, but this time the angels of Esav is like, no, I'm forcing you to stay. You're going to have to face me. You're going to have to face me if you're going to be an Israelite, the first Israelite. If you're going to do that, you're going to have to face Esav.
I mean, on some level, all these answers, whether he's struggling with himself or whether he's struggling with the angel of Esav, or, the sages also say that this was the Yetzer Hara, or maybe it's the Malach HaMavet, the angel of death, is that these all essentially are inner struggles with who will he be. Remember, Esav is his twin brother. So on some level, their very existence has been a struggle with two faces of the human experience since the beginning. So the question, and one of the reasons I think that Yaakov comes away from this limping, and that even though the angel changed his name to Israel, as I mentioned before, not the last part.
Wait. I need to be separate. He does not change the name. He does not change the name.
Another name.
Well, I would say he gives him a preview of what's going to happen. Like what's really going to happen.
Later, God actually does the changing. My point is he ends up with two sides which are not reconciled. He's limping. He literally, remember, he walks away from this victorious but limping.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and that limp is more than just symbolism. He's embodying this very difficult split within himself, which he never reconciles, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Yaakov and Israel like coexist. Those are they are
the last lines of his life. He is both.
Let's just read the Hebrew a little bit. Vayar ki lo yachalo. One entity saw that he couldn't defeat the other entity. The simple meaning is that the angel couldn't defeat Yaakov. Veiga bekaf yircho, and he touched or struck at the ball ball socket of his thigh, which is, I think, to be generally understood as the what's called the pelvic bone, the hip socket, the hip joint. V'teka kaf yerech Yaakov, and the hip socket became detached for Jacob behavek imo when he struggled with him. Vayomer shalcheni, he says, now send me, let me go.
Let me go.
Ki ala shachar, because it's morning time, it's dawn. Well, what is that? Then the sages basically say, well, angels got to go, they got to get to work, they got to go praise God. Vayomer lo shalchecha ki im berechtani, I'm not going to send you, I'm not letting you go, I gotcha in my grip until you bless me. And then he says to him, Vayomer elav ma shimcha. So he says, what is your name? That's a strange question. We'll understand why in a second. Vayomer Yaakov, he says, my name is Jacob. Vayomer lo Yaakov ye'amer od. Jacob is not going to be what is said about you anymore. Vayomer lo Yaakov ye'amer od shimcha. Your name is not going to be said as Jacob. That doesn't mean you lose the name of Jacob. It just means that you'll be known as something else. Right. Ki im Yisrael, because you are going to be known. I think this is it's not the first time that the word Yisrael appears. I think in the Torah, but is it the first?
Where else would it have appeared?
I gotta check that. But anyway, this is certainly the first mention of it in this way, which is the new name that you're getting. Maybe it is the first appearance of this name Yisrael. Ki sarita im Elohim v'im anashim v'tochal, because you struggled with gods and with men, and you were able to. You were successful. You were victorious. 1 second. Let me just see here for a second. Right. And subsequently it tells us that when the sun came up, and it came in this place called Pniel, which is like the place where I saw the face of God. Yaakov was, like you were saying, limping, and therefore adds the Torah. Probably this is a later edition, and when I say later edition, I mean at Sinai as opposed to kind of earlier on. Al ken lo yochlu, because this is not about the narrative; it's like an addition to the narrative. Al ken, therefore, lo yochlu bnei Yisrael et gid hanasheh. The children of Israel are not allowed to eat the sciatic nerve, which is where exactly the detachment of the hip joint happened for Jacob. But if you hear the Hebrew, which is Gid Hanasheh, it's very, very similar sounding to Hagida Nashmecha, tell me your name. And that's where this whole happens. So there's a tie-in. There's something about what Jews eat, which ties into the story of Jacob struggling and this asking for the name, which is the name Israel.
What they don't eat, actually.
What they do not eat. By the way, I once saw I don't know the English word of it, the nikur for the sciatic nerve, taking on. I mean, you got to know what you're doing to get that little sinew out. You got to know what you're doing.
Ashkenazim actually don't do it. They just sell the hindquarters.
Go ahead.
Your turn. What?
Your turn. Go ahead.
What I was going to say is that I think we've spoken before that there's only 3 mitzvot which are in the book of Breshit. Now, remembering that, of course, all the mitzvot gain their force for Am Yisrael at Sinai. But
what's the third one? There's Brit Milah. There's Gid Hanasheh.
Oh, so there's Pruvu.
And there's Pruvu. And if you're really a serious Jew, then you know that there's the Aliyah to Eretz Yisrael. That's the other one. Okay.
It's not explicit mitzvah, and not one of the Targum mitzvah that is counted here. But
right.
My point is that because we're in the context of Gid Hanasheh, that's the one that everybody you never remember. If you ever want to quiz your friends, they might get be fruitful, multiply. They might get circumcision. Very few people will mention don't eat the sciatic nerve.
Right.
But there's a beautiful Sefer Chinuch that I have to mention that he says listen, Puravu is fundamental to life. Circumcision is the partnership between God and Am Yisrael in the completion of creation, and this seems so kiyun. And by the way, don't eat the left right hindquarters of the ungulate. Like what? So the Chinuch says fantastic. He says that this mitzvah embodies emunah. Bodies are faith that the divine promise will carry us through all the suffering of the generation. Because here, on one hand, like we mentioned, Yaakov came home because God had made all these promises. On the other hand, he's so far from done. He's so far from done, and he's limping already.
Right.
And he's got a lot of struggles, even in this parsha, much less to the end of his life. And so it represents this sort of deep faith, which we have to imbibe. We actually have, in this case, not eat, but we have to build into our lives that the promise will be fulfilled.
Rav Mike, I really think that everybody that I know, Jews and non-Jews, but especially Jewish people in general, we're limping. On the one hand, we run ahead and we feel tremendous yearning to do and to change and to effectuate and to just make this world better and also for ourselves better, and there's just tremendous drive. And on the other hand, there's always that emotional struggle inside, the challenges of this world, the challenges of faith, the challenges of health, and many raising children and welfare. And there's always this you're always a little bit limping. And all of my best friends, whenever you call them, they'll say, this is amazing, this is amazing, this is amazing, but this is my struggle, and this is my struggle, and this is my struggle. And I think that's just that's very much part of being an Israelite / a Jacobite. It's there's something Supermanish and there's something Clark Kentish.
Yeah. I mean, it's also the human condition. I mean,
Right.
Just me, you wouldn't want to be finished with your struggles, because
That's
then
right.
you'd be in the grave.
I just wanna put up a few comments that are happening right now. First thing from Benji Sion, which is Benji. Benji is like Benjamin Sion. He says, currently listening with my Palestinian Muslim neighbor, sending love from Chabad of Poway area. And he puts in a Muslim icon and a Jewish icon there together, and that's awesome. So thank you very much, and God bless both of you, and thank you for coming together to hear words of Torah. That's wonderful. Len Mac 71 says it is the first appearance of Yisrael.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much. And he's coming in from YouTube, so that's very, very good. And Jay White says Rav Kessin mentioned Esav's 3 traits. Rav Kessin has become a rabbi that a lot of people are listening to. God bless him. He writes, arrogance, pleasure seeker, and a fraud, two-faced. Thanks for the great input. As always, gentlemen, great parsha, full of redemption, coming ASAP.
That's Shem.
Amen. And DJ Fuchs writes, my man, he writes, what's up, rabbis? Thanks for keeping me sane. We're doing our best out there. It's not easy with you, DJ, but you're doing a great job. God bless you. And he's another good friend. We have so many good friends out there, and all of us have a hard time staying a little bit sane. I always say this.
I don't try, actually. That's my tactic.
I never forget the realization that I had one time in an airport where there was online for security. Maybe 10 people in front of me was a girl who was clearly mentally handicapped and on the spectrum of some kind, and she was really suffering, and she was really screaming and just really going crazy at this people checking her stuff and making her take out all of her stuff so she could go through the metal detector, and she was truly, truly, truly upset. And I wasn't on the plane with her, but I'm sure that it was not easy for her either, the airplane ride. And I thought to myself, girl, I feel the same way as you. It's just that I'm holding it in better. It's just that I'm, but I understand how crazy you may feel right now. I understand that the world is nuts and that they're making us, take out all of our stuff and being so invasive, and then later squishing you into a tuna can so you could fly somewhere else. It's a weird world out there, and it's sometimes a little bit scary. So I know what you mean, DJ out there. Keeping sane is not always easy, but we bless you to keep it all together. We bless you and ourselves to keep it all together. Am I right, Rev Mike?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want to go into my theories of sanity. Let's move on to the parsha.
A tiny theory? Tiny theory?
Yeah, I know. I just think that one of the challenges that we face is that we tend to offload our sanity into structures. The world is normal. It will always function this way, etc. And that's one of the reasons that something like the COVID crisis has produced a tidal wave of mental health challenges. And it's, I think, pushing us to ground ourselves in ourselves, that a genuine acceptance and love of ourselves, a faith that the Boy Olam wouldn't have brought me into the world if I didn't belong here. And this is really seasonal for Hanukkah, sort of like a deep belief that truth is nothing is sort of coming to me in life. And therefore, everything I have should be a source of gratitude.
Do you think that COVID, I know that people that have, what's it called when they're afraid of medical stuff?
A phobia?
What's it called when you're afraid of, when you think you're going to get sick all the time?
Oh, hypochondria?
hypochondria. Like I know that those folks that have a tendency towards that have definitely felt COVID very, very strongly. But do you think also maybe in part it's not so much that the disease, that the sickness, this pandemic has brought out external tensions, but really also have caused people to face themselves a lot more because they're just more at home and have to deal with themselves a lot more and have to kind of deal with family and other issues that they kind of were able to bury through work and just being out of the house?
Yeah, it's a crucible. It is a crucible. When the walls get tighter and the pressure goes up, you can burn away the slag and become more pure, but also the fractures in the structure get exposed very quickly.
Okay, just one more thing. DJ asks, what's in my background? Because you might have said this already, what's in your background? These are two robots fighting, and the idea of the two robots fighting is that this is these twins, Jacob and Esav, who are thrashing it out. And here it is exactly, that once again, Yaakov is splitting up the camp, and he's putting the Leah camp to come first and to see Esav. They're finally going to meet. There's going to be this mano a mano, meeting, and here they are, and he's going to present his family, but he's going to put Leah and her kids first, and then finally, and he's going to put last is Joseph and Rachel. Okay, maybe there's some concern that Rachel's beauty would be enticing to Esav, his brother. I think that's the simple meaning of it.
Yeah.
And Esav,
I think also the simple meaning is that it's a little bit brutal in our eyes, but he's worried if Esav attacks that the most precious person in his life should at least be at the back of the line.
Mm-hmm. And what's so painful about this Torah portion is that Rachel, who is defended, protected, Joseph, her son, comes up in front of her, kind of, I'm her oldest, and he's out there, but she is fragile, or her spirit, her soul is going to leave her in a very poignant description, which we're going to read in just a few minutes. In any case,
I want to add to this scene, though, because the rabbis have a deep criticism of Yaakov's attitude here, of putting the handmaidens first, and then Leah, and then Rachel, and they say, hey, where's Dinah? Because she's not in the list. It just talks about his sons. They say that the Midrash says that Yaakov hid Dinah away in a box, right, in order that Esav not see her at all. But there's at least one Midrash, and certainly an interpretive tradition, that says that Yaakov was punished for that. Because the reality is it could be that Dinah could have given Esav the love that he needed to really turn toward Yaakov and not away, and to really do tshuva. And his fear that Esav would ruin everything he touched actually caused him to deny from his brother something which actually could have healed him. And this is just a lesson for us all. It's a legitimate fear, and nobody's questioning that Yaakov had reason to be afraid. Nonetheless, right, when we make our decisions out of fear, we often prevent the redemptive potential of the situation from unfolding.
That's a tricky one, because nobody wants their daughter to marry Esav, right?
Unless he becomes the Esav which he could have been,
right,
which Yitzchak saw within him, which ultimately that head of Esav that rests in the tomb of the patriarchs and the matriarchs. So yeah, there's a lot there.
Esav runs towards Yaakov, and this running is like yeah, exactly. It's like, I used to have this dog.
Banner.
God rest her soul. I used to have this dog, Pilpel. She was the nicest dog in the world. She never bit anybody, never hurt anybody, but she had a very nasty tendency of wanting to run up. Now, she was a large dog, and she would run to people at full speed, and not one time did I see people just basically be like, Shema Yisrael, it's over. This dog is going for my neck. And I'm running behind, it's okay. But people did not see me. They just see this hound running, this wolf-like creature running at their throats. In any case, when Esav is running towards him, it must have been a harrowing moment. I think the Torah purposely writes us to us, as you said before, maybe there's a side of Esav that would still love to draw the knife and drive it in. Or is it that what he ended up doing, which was Vayishakehu, and he kissed him. Vaifku, right? And they cried. Famously, there are dots above the word Vayishakeu. The sages say he tried to bite him. He tried to bite him right in the neck, in the jugular. But the simple reading is no, that he kissed him and embraced him.
Well, careful, it's a machloket between Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and the sages.
Right.
Some of the sages say that he actually didn't kiss him with a full heart, or he maybe even tried to bite him. Rabbi Yishai Fleisher actually says a very interesting tension. He says, no, Allah Yudua, like everybody knows Esav hit Yaakov. That's not the question. But here, actually, Niharulo Rahama, right, that he was overwhelmed with love for him in this moment. And I think that Rashbi of everyone was able to see the power of opposites, you know, and the power of a single moment to overturn an essential trait. That, yeah, he hated his brother, but not right then.
Mm-hmm. It could be, and
it could be Rashbi.
Yeah, I actually I liked very much Sfat Emet, and he writes, how could the rabbi say when he kissed him that he bit him? You can't change the word of the Bible. It says he kissed him, not he bit him. He goes, no, what they mean is his kiss is his greatest bite. And that was the real concern there, that he was trying to kiss him and be too close to him. And we see that subsequently...
The warning to all you Jewish Republicans out there.
Well, it's to Jewish Republicans. What do you mean by that? There's also so many Jewish Democrats who have become completely assimilated to America.
No, I was just saying that I think that President Trump is the most Asavian figure we've seen in at least a couple generations.
Yes, but I think that my take, of course, my partisan take on this thing is that he has done everything to be a tikkun of Asavian tactics. He's tried to fix almost all of them amazingly. But anyways, we're not going to the Trumpian thing.
I just want to give it.
No, it's good. It was good. It was a good move. It was a good move. I like that one. That was fun. We have limitations of time, and I want to make sure that we cover everything. In any case, Jacob is trying to give Esav these presents, and Esav says to him, "Yesh li rav, achi. I have much,
lots and lots.
Yelecha shelecha. You should have what you should have." I like a different explanation. I like, now that I've seen you, Yesh li rav, achi. You're my rabbi. You're my rabbi now. That's the other side of that.
That's a nice dress.
Yeah, Yesh li rav, achi. You're my rabbi. Like you know what I mean. You got to be strong, and it's important, and I'll be your patron now. What's that?
Pressure. I said it's a lot of pressure being people's rabbi.
That's right. It is. But that's my other take. Yesh li rav, achi. Like I now I have you're my rav, and you should be blessed to have what you have. But he wanted very much for him to take his gift, and it pushes him to receive that gift. One of the recurring words in this week's parsha is panim, face. It's a recurring. It's there's the face of the angel. The place is called the face, and then he says here. He says, now I've seen your face. It's like seeing the face of God, and you have embraced me. You have accepted me. So please take my gift. And that's also in the ancient world. Kind of if your gift is rejected, it's not a good thing. You want the gift to be received, and therefore is received. But at the same time, though, the next section is that Esav tries to stay close to Yaakov, and Yaakov says, "No, you go on your way." And then Esav says, "What if I leave a few people with you?" "No, thanks. I go slowly. Let me go my way, and you go to Seir, which is southwest Jordan. You go to the Negev desert. That's where you live, Esav, in Edom. I have to go back to the heart of the land of Israel, and kind of we have to separate here. And so therefore there's peace between us, but still a peace not of closeness, but of a kind of healthy separation."
Yeah, I mean, one of the most evocative elements of that exchange is what Rashi brings to the Midrash. Is like, is this an upwelling of the old Jacob who makes a promise that he never intends to keep? Because he doesn't come to Seir. We don't see him there, but Rashi quotes that sort of beautiful line from, I think it's from Avadia, if I'm not mistaken, right? That there's a part of the vision of redemption is when Yaakov and Esav return, but that there's a standard of judgment between them. Because right now, this is the challenge Yaakov faces. He is on an internal level. He's seen angels. He's hearing God. He knows what he's doing is right. But in the eyes of the world, he's just another guy who's wronged his brother. Or at the very least, they've wronged each other, and it's a power struggle, right? And it's just similar to the situation we face today from an internal perspective. We know as Am Yisrael that being back in our land, that attempting to build a society and influence the world is precisely what we're meant to be doing. But in the eyes of the world, we're just another sort of like power broker in small even, trying to just carve out his piece of the pie and using stories to justify our actions. Right? It's going to take an internal revolution for us to be able to radiate the depth of the truth outwards. Kacha.
So wait. So I just want to understand your last phrase, which is the conflict a good thing? Can we get over the like? Is there like there's a tension here between like Esav? Is he friend or foe? You know what I mean? Is he somebody who
is part of the world? Esav is an essential aspect of the world. We have not learned how to be ourselves in a powerful enough way that allows him to relate to us rightly.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So you're bringing it back to that tension of Yaakov and Israel, trying to get to a place of finding the Israel inside.
Which I think, in my opinion, it's always the truth is that for Am Yisrael, the external problems are symptoms. They're not the essential.
And we are still very much living in a time right now. We're living in that time where we're really trying to find our inner voice, our inner who we our own like real true Kol Yaakov. And that's what I was saying. We're still limping. We're still limping along. And speaking of that, speaking of like finding peace, it says, verse 17, V'Yaakov nasa Sukkota. Yaakov went to a place called Sukkot, V'yiven lo bait, and he builds himself a house, which is another recurring word in the parsha, which is house. Ulemikneo asa Sukkot, but for his animals, for his flock, he made these Sukkot, these impermanent dwellings. Alken kra Hashem hamakom Sukkot. He called the name of it Sukkot. I have a different read on this verse, which is Yaakov went to this place, V'yiven lo bait, and who built for him a house? Hashem builds him a house. Ulemikneo asa Sukkot, and he put his flock in a safe place. And for the first time in a long time, Yaakov has got some respite. Just for the first time in a long time, he's got Sukkot. And if you've ever had the holiday of Sukkot, you know that Sukkot is a sense of respite. It's really a sense of respite from a world that's about to start again, the winter world, and from all the holidays. It's just a moment of peace. And this year, especially through COVID, I think we also had a lot of people reported that they had a very peaceful Sukkot because they really were inside their Sukkah. So there was a moment of light in this thing. And so God was like, you've had a lot of adventures, and you're going to keep on going on adventures, but now very Israeli adventures, very land of Israel adventures, very challenging adventures. But just for a second, take a deep breath, Yaakov. Take a deep breath and enjoy this time in Sukkot. The next thing he goes to is indeed Shechem. It says that he came whole to the city of Shechem, or maybe there's actually a town named Shalem next to Shechem, next to the city of Shechem. In any case, he comes there, and by the way, you see it says Vayachan et Pnei Ha'ir. He comes and he parks kind of across the face of the city, which usually means to the east. But in any case, once again, you see that word Pnei. It's everywhere in the parsha, the face of the city. Mm-hmm. And he buys a plot of land. And this just like an aside, but it's going to be that plot of land which is going to be the burial place of Joseph. Many, many years down the line, down after the going down to Egypt of this family, and then the children of Israel are enslaved there, and then they're going to come out with Moses, and there's going to be Joseph's bones, and finally, Joseph's bones in the book of Joshua are going to be buried in this very spot. So to me, the beginnings of the first dribs and drabs, the first drops, the messenger drops, the first clue idea that we're really going into exile starts here as we're coming into the land of Israel.
It's also an important piece to the conquest.
Go ahead.
Right? Meaning the two pieces of land that are purchased in this, I think all of Sefer Bereshit, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, that's right.
In fact, it's the whole Torah. The two pieces of land that are purchased are burial plots. I mean, even though the Tomb of the Patriarchs and Matriarchs is explicitly so, and this one ultimately comes at, but it just shows this sort of like deep-rooted, embodied aspect of relationship to the land, which is bound up with its conquest. Because you skip the fact that when it wasn't just in the book of Joshua, I would say it was a high point of the conquest when Joseph's bones are laid to rest. It's like, yes, now we're actually home. And of course, with Caleb and Yoshua going to the city of Hebron, specifically when they come to spy out the land. It's very bound up with this conquest in terms of where are the roots that we already struck and how do we build out from them in our ability to return to this land?
Right.
It's a question which obviously has a lot of resonance in our day.
Yeah, and you're totally right to connect Hebron and Shechem, who are like in a sense it's kind of twin cities of this like burial of the roots. I wouldn't even call it burial. I would call it like it is burial, but it's the planting of the roots of right. And we have about 10-15 more minutes, but we've got to get through three important kind of chapters in the life of Yaakov. But my point is that just as we're coming into Geula, just as Yaakov is coming into redemption to the land that he waited for so long, begins in there the seed of the exile. Yeah. And I think also one could say, and we know this well, the moment there's an exile for the Jewish people, begins the seed of redemption, right?
Well, I mean, you have to remember, exile is only exile because you believe that you belong somewhere other than when you find yourself.
Right.
There can't be an exile unless there's a striking root in the land. Otherwise, it's called migration.
Right. Very good point.
Right. Very good point. That's why, by the way, most of American Jewry doesn't see itself as an exile any longer. The softening of to diaspora, that we've moved way beyond that. Now there's American Jews. That's where they belong.
A lot of times I say to people, I'm like, you're not in exile. You're in diaspora. Because exile means you're kicked out of the land. Here, you're choosing to stay out of the land. So therefore, there's a different term for you, which is not, it's not a negative term. But it is a more real term, which is diaspora. You choose to live outside of the land, which is your choice, but that is not an exile.
Yeah, but even diaspora means that you've been dispersed from a center.
Right.
Whereas, sort of progressive and more liberal American Jewry has begun either consciously or unconsciously to reject even that. They haven't been dispersed or certainly not exiled. They're just where they are and where they belong. And there's a different type of Judaism which emerges there, which has a historic parallel in Hellenistic Judaism. It's very resonant with the Hanukkah story as well, because we'll speak about it in a couple weeks.
That's right. Let's get to these three stories that we have to hit, okay?
Please do.
Here we go. First one is the violation of Dinah. Dinah, daughter of Jacob, she's the main character in this story. She goes out and she is grabbed by this guy named Shechem ben Chamor. His name is Shechem. He lives in Shechem. His father's name is Chamor, which is also another name for donkey, which is clearly not a compliment.
Although one imagines that his name wasn't actually in Hebrew.
Right.
It might have been in the Canaanite language.
I was wondering this last night. I'm like, communicating.
I was like, association.
Right. But still, the Torah is winking at us.
Oh, the Torah is definitely
it's winking at us.
And it also, by the way, means physicality. Right? Chomer is material substance.
That's right. That's right. There's materialism, and they're coming into the land, and he violates Dinah against her will. But maybe he's not very embarrassed about it because it seems like it might have been something that they did at the time, and he falls in love with her. That's what the Torah basically says, and his soul cleaved to her soul, and he wanted to marry her. So he asks her father to please negotiate with this tribe, these tribes that has come down now, this obviously wealthy tribe, and the negotiation is basically like, marry us, we'll marry you, and you'll have a hold in the land. And the way I heard it yesterday, which I thought was very strong, was on the face of it, it's not so bad. On the face of it, it's like, wow, this is the Abrahamic promise. We will, you'll inherit this land, and then the sons of Yaakov say, well, no, we'll only do it if you circumcise yourself. And they say, sure, we'll circumcise ourselves. They accept that idea, and then so these Gentiles are circumcising themselves. That means they're coming into the covenant of Abraham, and the children of Israel are getting the land. Seems like a good deal. Seems like things are progressing in the right way, in the Abrahamic way. Seems like it, right?
Right.
But indeed, that is not what happens at all. Rather, two sons of Yaakov, Shimon and Levi, come into the city on the third day after all the menfolk had been circumcised, and they basically slaughter the city and take pillage. Yes. And that's the story. And then the end of the story is that there's just one line I wanted to say, that Shechem, he convinces the city to do it, and he says the words Hanashim ha'ele shlemim hem itanu. These people are whole with us. We want to circumcise ourselves, but these people are whole. There's something whole about it, something beautiful about it. Let's get together with them. And there's little clues in there that also they're not like the nicest people in the sense that A, first he violated Dinah, and B says they'll give us our daughters and we'll let them take ours. We won't give them our daughters. There's a kind of inequality. There's something good for us. There's a good deal for us. It's not just about being close to God. You get a few snippets of that. But in the end, these two sons of Jacob, in fury, come into the town, and they destroy the town. They pillage it, and they took out Dinah from the house. Notice the word "bayit" again, from the house, and they leave. Meaning to say, in a sense, that also tells us she was trapped there. She was in that house and was unable to leave. Really, until they came and kind of rescued her, and the end of that very, very famous section, very intense section, is that Jacob says to Shimon and Levi, he says, "You've made me stink in this land. Everybody's going to kind of smell the bad odor of what I've done, and I'm only very few in number. And now they're going to gather against me, and I'm going to be destroyed. I and my house." There's the word house again. And they answered, "Vayomer ha'kezonai aset achotenu." Should our sister be treated like a harlot?
Right.
And there's no answer. There's not going to be an answer until Jacob's blessings or curses or anger that he's going to show at the end of his life. And really, a lot of folks understand this to be a little bit of a tension between diaspora way of dealing with things and sovereign Israel ways of dealing with things. They see Shimon and Levi as being more robust, more not allowing bad things to happen, and indeed they seem justified because nobody does touch the Jacob's family after when they start moving again. No, everybody's afraid of them. There's a fear that comes upon the people of the land from this cruelty, this very robust policy of striking against of what they perceive as enemies. But on the other hand, at the end of the time, the end of Jacob's life, he's going to really curse them and not see it a different way. And the Torah is silent. There's a bit of an agnostic moment here, which is you've got to decide, what's right or wrong. And before I just let you comment, one last phrase on that, I have been satisfied by an explanation that a friend of mine named Natan Katlarov gave me many years ago. We were standing in Beit El. I remember where we were standing. We were discussing the Torah portion, and he says to me something that I remember to this day. I don't know why, but I remember where we stood and what he said and who the guy was. And he says to me, what's wrong with this picture is that they used trickery through coming closer to God. Have a circumcision, become more Jewish, come into a covenant, and then they struck them. That's wrong. That is stinking the name of God. That is cheapening the name of God. You use the beauty of Torah to destroy people. That can't be done. If you want to fight a fair war, fight a fair war. But don't use goodness and the covenant as a ruse.
Yeah, I mean, there's either so much or not anything really to say further about this. Well, one thing I will say about the sort of unresolved conclusion is that that's the nature of life, and therefore, of course, it's reflecting the Torah. There's not always a resolution between those two things. Yaakov is right, and the brothers are right.
Mm-hmm.
No. Or Yaakov is wrong, and the brothers are wrong, depending on which side you look at it from. The other thing I wanted to just add in terms of your image of what appears to be this very welcoming attitude, and maybe this should have been like the fulfillment of the Abrahamic promise. I think that the key for understanding why it was not is what Hamor and Shechem actually say to their own compatriots when they're trying to convince them to go through this plan to circumcise, because they say their cattle will be ours and want their substance and all the beasts be ours. Let's just agree and they will dwell with us. Meaning Shechem and Hamor see themselves as the context, and they see Yaakov and his family as coming in to be an add-on, right? And that can never be the way it is. The relationship between Yaakov and this land is fundamental. If Yaakov and his sons were the context, and Shechem and Hamor willing to fit into their context, it could have been otherwise. I think it's very similar, strangely enough, to the mandatory period in sort of more modern Jewish history, where the British said, "Oh no, come, we'll build you a home," and then we ended up fighting them for it. Some people looked at us, even some of our fellow Jews, and said, "Well, that's just ungrateful. They're trying to build you a home." And our answer was, there are things that no one else can give you. Actually, there are things in life that a person must take, right? And your autonomy and your independence, one of them. You cannot grant someone, like we spoke a while ago,
about sovereignty.
Give someone's sovereignty. By definition, that's not sovereignty. Sovereignty is something that has to be taken.
Right.
It can be taken consensually, meaning I say, "By the way, I'm taking this," and you say, "Oh, okay," right? But in the same way, Yaakov and his sons had to establish their presence in the land. And if they don't succeed now, then their children's children will do so when they come out of Egypt.
Just want to say for a second, just want to point out that Rivka says, Gurevich says, shout out from Germany. Thank you very much, Rivka. God bless you. Hope to see you soon. And my good friend Eric Ross says, shalom from Geneva. Rabbis, we miss you, Eric, so much. He was one of my very, very dear friends. And I love my connection with him. And there's just so many great people around the world. Mark says, Am Yisrael struggling to find peace with his Arab brothers, a familiar theme. Usually what's that?
They were Philistines. They actually wouldn't be the Canaanites.
These guys were they were Hivites, I think. I think they were. What's that?
One of the Canaanite tribes. I
think they're one of the 7 nations. No.
Yeah, that's one of the Canaanite tribes. 7 nations.
Right. I know, but I say that specifically as in the 7 nations are people that are going to be later commanded to get rid of from the land.
And I'm only picking on it because the sort of mythology that the modern Arab world is trying to propagate, that they are the indigenous peoples here instead of a colonial force that came out of the Arabian Peninsula, 1,000+ years ago. Let's not call Shechem and Hamor Arabs.
Right. Very good. Very good. And now it's time for the what's the word? This apex moment, which is it's time to go back to Beit El. Yeah. That's where you and God and Yaakov had a very emotional face-to-face moment. That's where you made an oath to me. That's the place that I called you back, Jacob, from Beit El, the house of God, and that's where I'm calling you back to fulfill your promise. Remember, there's a tension between Beit El, the house of God, the town, and also the Temple Mount, which is Jerusalem, and the house of God that's supposed to be built there. An interesting tension. We talked about it last week. In any case, they indeed come there. The other peoples of the land do not touch the children of Jacob. There's a fear upon them. They come to this town called Luz, which is Beit El, and he will make Jacob will make a mizbeach there. Forget it. I'll never remember that word for some reason. I don't know what it is. Word? It's just a thing. He'll make an altar there. I'll just remember the word alt. Maybe that's the original alt-right, is what they meant as altar. Okay, I don't know. No, just joking, everybody. Just joking. Don't worry about it. Just making jokes. He made there an altar, and he called it El Beit El. Rashi says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu beBeit El. Galui Shchinato beBeit El. You could see his presence in Beit El, and what I said last week as well, come to Beit El one time on your trips to the land of Israel, you will really feel the presence of God. Honestly, you really will. It's a town that the presence of God, till this day, you could really feel it in. Really. In any case, there's that word Beit again, but now it's about the house of God. And here is where I think the coronation happens. Chapter 35, verse 9. Verse 10, Vayomer lo Elohim Shimcha Yaakov lo yikare Shimcha od. Lo yikare Shimcha od Yaakov. Your name Yaakov, you're not going to be called Yaakov anymore. Ki im Yisrael yeshmecha. Your name is going to be Israel. V'ikrat shmo Yisrael. And he's going to name him Israel there. So the place is called Beit El. Your name is Israel. This is the house of God. You're the Israel. We're getting our roll straight here. And this land that I promised you, you're going to get. And then in verse 13 it says, Vayal me'alav Elohim b'makom asher diber ito. God rose up from him, or left him from the place that he spoke to him. It's a strange verse, and it's so strange that Rashi goes out of his way to say, I don't know what this verse means, which is really cool of Rashi. Really cool of Rashi to be like, I don't know. That's just not, I just want you to know, I don't know, which is another way of Rashi saying, you figure it out. What do you think?
But it's also, I find it somewhat amusing because Rashi knows as soon as you read that line, you looked at his commentary. And he's like, they're going to look. And I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not really sure, but I know you're going to look. So I'll tell you that I don't know.
Yeah, I love it. I love that line, and it's a great humility line. It's got, I don't know why, I think the words are Ve'ini yodeh ma melamdenu. I just don't know what it teaches us. But I would like to suggest to our great teacher Rashi, I'd like to suggest a thought, which is like this, which is, it says that he rose to him in the place that he spoke to him. And one of the things about the word Beit El is that Bethel is one of the most popular names for churches, schools, synagogues, towns. There's a lot of places that want to be Bethel, the house of God. Every church or synagogue says, this is Bethel here.
It's the house of God, yeah.
Right, come in through these doors and you'll connect to God. But what God is saying is, and that's beautiful and that's great that places are called Bethel, but there is a place.
Right.
There is a real place. That place is here, and that's where we met.
The original with the admiring copies. It's admiring.
That's right. That's my shot on that. But the next scene, this is. Oh, I know that maybe before we finish off, I know that you're going to talk about your father's yortzeit coming up. Our fathers have yortzeits in a similar time. Mine is actually this Sunday, the passing day of my father. My father was fascinated and wrote scientific papers dealing with the Bible, but also wrote about Rachel Imenu and the interest that he had in Rachel. But in any case, when Jacob finally comes to Beit El, he's going to get that name, coronation of Israel, and he's going to fulfill the promise to come back to this place. And now the last thing to do is to come to Yitzchak and to see him in Hebron, and to show him the family, and to show him what this whole thing is about. And I'm sure what he really wanted to show also was his beloved wife Rachel, and yet she's not going to make it. On the way down there, close to where I'm sitting right now, in Bethlehem, did Rachel Imenu pass away, and she was buried there. She could have easily been carried to the tomb of the fathers and mothers, but she was not. On the spiritual explanation is that she forfeited her place of laying down with Jacob and gave it to her sister. So too, her sister Leah will be with Yaakov forever entombed. Another explanation is that a psychological one is that when she passed away, it was so heartbreaking. It was so impossible to deal with for him that there was no way he could have carried her any further. He had to bury her right there in Bethlehem. And my Yishai explanation is that Rachel, we know in chapter I think 32 of Jeremiah, I think it's 32. He says she laments, she continues to cry for her children because they are not with us. They are somehow exiled outside of the land of Israel. She continues They're still on the way. And when you're at the tomb of the patriarchs and matriarchs at Hebron, there is something about that which gives peace, comfort, because you're with the family. Rachel refuses to be comforted, and therefore she's alone, and she's bitterly crying for her children to come home. That's her role, to continuously cry. And finally, I say, Rav Mike, when people make aliyah to the land of Israel, I always recommend that they come to the tomb of Rachel and say, you can keep crying, but not for me. I am home, mother. Nice. That's what I always recommend for people. So that's a very kind of painful last scene. Tell me about the tomb of Rachel and that scene of Rachel Imenu passing away.
The only thing I could add to that is, the Gemara has this very interesting observation. The Yaakov Avinu no met. The Yaakov never actually dies, because it says he gets sick, but it never says that he dies. And we know that it's Yisrael who's laid to rest in the tomb of the patriarchs and the matriarchs. So on some level, if you remember, Yaakov marries Rachel. It's Yaakov that comes and falls in love with Rachel. So Rachel is really Yaakov's spouse. And she's buried along the way in the same way that he never really dies, meaning there's a side of Am Yisrael which is always in process. In fact, there's a side of the human condition. Let's not, keep it exclusive to Am Yisrael. There's a side of the human condition that's always in process, a little bit in exile, weeping for what might be, struggling to get there. And that's what Rachel represents. Yisrael is the perfection of Yaakov. And Leah, who bears his 6 sons, including, of course, Yudad, our holy ancestor, right? She is able to come to rest. having completed and succeeded what it is to be a mother in Israel. And so they represent these sort of two sides of the couple in that. And in that sense, despite the pain of her early loss, it is consistent with the role she plays in his life and the life of forming the sort of Holy Family.
That's right, and she's considered kind of the mom. Imagine being King David and being raised in Bethlehem and knowing that this tomb of the other mother of Israel, not his lineage, Leah, but the mother of Israel, Rachel, is there in Bethlehem, buried there, and they probably saw that place all their lives. They knew the tomb of Rachel. I always thought that that's probably why King David could be a king in Israel, because he was in the land of Leah, but he grew up also with Rachel close by, and that mixture really brings you to be the king of all of Israel, as opposed to being the king of just your tribe. Finally. And it's not finally, because there's other parts of this Torah portion which we're not going to cover. But finally, Yaakov does make it to Hebron. It says, "He Hebron asher gar sham Avraham v'Yitzchak." This is the city of Hebron, which Abraham and Isaac lived there. And Isaac is now passing away. He is 100, he's 180 years old. Yeah. And he passes away, Zaken v'Saveh Yamim, old and satisfied of days. V'yigberu oto Esav v'Yaakov banav, and it's Esav and Yaakov who bury him together. So that's kind of the end of the Torah portion. Then we're going to have a large codex of the lineage of Esav. There was one tiny thing that I forgot to say, and I know we're going long, so I'll just ask you for another 3 minutes, Rav Mike. Do I have another 3 minutes with you?
Yeah, sure.
Just one thing I forgot to say, one more thing, which is something that I saw in a midrash that I forgot to mention, which is so important. Dinah is violated by Shechem. The midrash says that she became pregnant, and she gave birth to a girl. Her name was Osnat, and this girl, the brothers wanted to kill her because she was a product of this violation, this unholy union, right? But Yaakov felt something special about her, and he wrote the name of God for her on a golden amulet, golden amulet, and hung it around her neck. The angel Michael came and took her down to Egypt. Where was she picked up? At the house of Potiphar. Mrs. Potiphar, it turns out, was unable to bear children and adopted this Osnat. And this Osnat later on is going to be the woman that Yosef marries, and it's from his half-sister Dinah, and also from the town of Shechem, which in the end, that's where he's going to be buried. So it all comes down. And there's a foreshadowing there. If you listen to that medrash, it's very much like the medrash of Moses being born. He can't be kept. He's sent down, and somebody who can't have children adopts him. There's a foreshadowing to that, and that's what I wanted to point out, that in the minute of redemption, there's also that seed of exile. And you said rooted. Now that we're rooted in the land of Israel, we're going to be in exile, but we can always return. And the story of Joseph gets its first vibrations. Yeah. Right. In this week's Torah portion, and you hear suddenly that something is going to go not so simple from here on end for the rest of the book of Bereshit. Not a simple continuation to the story. We're going to get into the Joseph story next. In the meantime, Rav Mike Feuer, thank you so much for a fabulous hanging out time with you here on this amazing technology. And thank you. People have mentioned how they like the books in your background because it makes you look scholarly and rabbinic. And that you are. So please, I recommend everybody check out your other website, which is ravmike.com, and also jewishstory.co. Your other show here on the Land of Israel Network is fabulous. I'm not just a promoter, but I'm a listener. And also your spiritual counseling, which you do with a lot of people who want to get strengthened spiritually. And make the most of the greatest gift of them all, which is the gift of life. So thank you so much, Rav Mike Feuer, and Shabbat Shalom.
Wait, I want to just quickly invite folks.
Oh yes, go ahead.
This coming December 7th, this coming Monday, as my father's yard site. I give an annual shiur on Hanukkah. This year is going to be how the Hanukkah lights are actually gratitude itself. We just got to learn to let the light out. That'll be at 8 o'clock on Zoom. If you're interested, you can go to my Facebook page, Rav Mike Feuer, and you'll see the event there. And happy if you want to contact me at ravmikefeuer@gmail.com. I'll share the details, and hopefully we'll see everybody there.
Absolutely. That is a really beautiful invitation. Thank you so much. Give us that date again.
The date is December 7th. It's coming Monday night at 8 p.m. Israel time.
Fabulous. All right, folks. That's going to be an awesome shiur. And I want to thank you so much. Please write me an email, yishai@yishaifleisher.com or yishai@thelandofisrael.com. And we love your connectivity. We love your. I got so many emails of pictures of the tomb of the ladder of Jacob's ladder. I got beautiful pictures from all over the world. So really great stuff. And lots of love and lots of blessings from the land of blessings. Rav Mike, Shabbat Shalom, and thanks again.
Shabbat Shalom.
All right, folks, you are listening to Yishai Fleisher. Thanks to Rav Mike. And I want to also really thank all of you out there and tell you that when you write an email, it makes all the difference in the world. I want to thank also Ben Bresky, Tabitha, and Moshe Herman for getting the show out to the world. It's awesome that we're able to get the show out to the world and through this amazing technology. Check out some of our sponsors, including Prohibition Pickle, which make great pickles that are not prohibitive, but rather give us a lot of Shabbos delight. And you could send it to anybody in Israel through going to Prohibition Pickle at Facebook or at Instagram. And also check out. So that's if you want to send it this way. And last week Dan sent me awesome pickles for my kiddush which actually happened to be with Rav Mike. So go to Prohibition Pickle, check that out. And if you want gifts outside of the land of Israel, from the land of Israel, check out Blessed by Israel, blessedbyisrael.com. Type in the coupon code Yishai, get 10% off, 12% off. What am I talking about? 12% like the 12 sons of Jacob. And that's Blessed by Israel, coupon code Yishai. Check out Tchelet, that's the True Blue Jew string. Biblical Blue is back. And you can check that out at Tchelet, Tekhelet, Tchelet.com. And coupon code Yishai will get you 5% off. What else? The Hebron Fund is having an awesome campaign to become stronger. The Jewish community of Hebron, which is mentioned at the end of our Torah portion. So strengthen Hebron and the tomb of the forefathers and mothers by checking out hebronfund.org and joining our short but important campaign to raise money to strengthen and beautify the Jewish community of Hebron and the tomb of the ancestors. Check out also the other shows at the Land of Israel Network, thelandofisrael.com, and a wonderful radio station, wonderful podcast station for all of your connectivity to the Land of Israel. And of course, check out yishaifleisher.com for more of my articles, videos, and tweets and Facebook stuff. Connect to us there, and of course you can donate there as well. Most important is that you check out the good book, the book of the Torah and God's message, which He's broadcasting 24/7. All we have to do is tune in. Finally, for those people listening on podcast, I'm going to end the show with the great song Katonti Mikol Chasadim, which is by the famous musical artist here in Israel, which you cannot stop, Yonatan Razel. He's amazing, and I'm just going to end the show off with that. And that is a song that talks about the kindness of God and how we're small, as opposed to the amazing gifts and amazing love that God has for us. And if you're alive, that means God believes in you. Stay tuned, folks. More great stuff is on the way. And be connected to the land of Israel. All kinds of forces want us to disconnect, but we won't let them. With power, with energy, with might, with passion, with the light of Hanukkah, with the light of Torah, and with a burning desire to understand, connect, plug in, find yes one more step towards the land of Israel, towards the God of Israel. Just one little step makes one little light can light up your whole soul and start you on a different path, and an amazing path. And we just have to hold on real tight to one another, hold on to the Torah of Israel, to the land of Israel, to the God of Israel, to the people of Israel, and be together wherever we are around the world. Lots of love and blessings from the land of blessings, and shalom.